But probably the most talked about person in the world right now is Kamala Harris. And as Vice President, she only had one job: close the border. And as we all know, the whole world knows, she failed on an epic scale. She once gave a speech where she simply told illegal immigrants, "Do not come," after which more than 8 million illegal immigrants came. In fact, as the border czar, she didn't even bother to visit the border, or at least not until she was shamed into doing so by, of all people, NBC News.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
So after that train wreck of an interview, she finally relented and went to the border that she was responsible for. And check out what the New York Post is now reporting happened when she went there back in June 2021. Federal agents were instructed to clear streets of migrants and put on a show for border czar Kamala Harris's only trip to the border. Now, in June 2021, when she visited, the New York Post reports there were 21,500 illegal migrants that month. But when she went there, well, the streets were bare. There was hardly a migrant to be seen. And the only ones that were seen, well, they were very well presented. Listen to what one of the border agents told the New York Post, and I quote, "They, that is the Biden administration, rented out a ton of hotels and we spent hours moving out bodies. The kids that remained, that's the migrant kids, we had to braid their hair." They made jokes about how the building Kamala Harris was visiting was more secure than the whole border. She had zero interest in really seeing anything. The whole thing was rushed. Caleb and Liz, this is an administration that we know for 4 years hid Joe Biden's dementia, and they spent 4 years hiding the crisis on the border. I might add, with help from the media, with help from local hotels. How can the American people believe anything they're told these days?
Well, they didn't really have to hide what was going on. In fact, they failed quite badly to hide what was going on, because anyone who lives in New York or any other part of the US where they've actually had to deal with all these people coming over the border, Texas, etc., and then being put up in luxury hotels and whatever, they're well aware of what was going on. But, imagine trying to pull that Swiftie. You didn't go there, then you go there. Oh, we'll just move you just out of frame, just for a minute, so it looks good. It reminds me, there was a story we talked about, I think, earlier in the year out of Victoria. It's the opposite of this one, where there was a hospital where the health minister was going to visit, and they were really worried that if the hospital didn't look full, that they wouldn't get the extra funding that they wanted. So the staff rung in, friends and family and whatever to come and fill up the beds, so that when the minister rocked up, it looked like the hospital was in full swing. Well, Harris has done the exact opposite here and gone, just get them out of the way. And this happens all the time. Anytime foreign dignitaries come to town, the homeless people. Remember Clover Moore did this in Sydney, 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. She just had them moved on for a while because there was a big event going on. Then, of course, after that, it doesn't matter, you can all come back now. Do they think we're that dumb? Do they really think we're that dumb that she would go down there and go, "Nothing to see here? It's all good, lads." It's not.
But she knew. I mean, her entire administration is very much culpable. In fact, they facilitated, we've covered before, the fact that America was flying in some of these illegals. They simply had to get on an app. Most recently, I saw China has now produced a documentary telling people how they can make use of this open border into America. Go on, guys, run along, infiltrate. So she knew this was because they knew if the VP was going, there would go the media. And so they didn't want what was happening at the border to be prolifically playing out in the background while she's standing there going, "Photo ops, I'm at the border. I promised you I'd go. Look at me doing my job." So they had to make it squeaky clean for all the media attention it would have suggested. But how do you love the mainstream media in America. I'm telling you, you do not hate these guys enough. Because, of course, the Trump campaign is running very strongly on the very glaring issue of illegal immigration. And she, as now the almost president, should the Democrats win in November, she was in charge of the border. So now they're trying to convince us that she wasn't the border czar. Check out this clip comparing media in 2023, when, yes, she was the border czar, to media now in 2024 trying to convince everyone she was never the border czar. What are you talking about?
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
What is this now? Don't believe your lying ears? I mean, everyone knew that was one of the things that she was appointed with as soon as she was elected as VP, as soon as they made it into the White House in 2020. Although you'd think for a party that was so firm on people's correct pronouns, they'd call her the Czarina. She's not a czar. Come on, guys, get this right. But the Republicans, of course, are charging on with their anti-immigration campaigns, much like Bill Eagle. He's the Missouri state senator. Check out his campaign ad.
I'm Bill Eagle. I'm running for governor to crack down on illegal immigration.
Él es Bill Eagle y tomará medidas enérgicas contra la inmigración ilegal.
No more taxpayer handouts for illegals, period. Nada. Zilch. Zero.
No más ilegales, no más dinero, no más fiestas.
We're throwing them in jail and sending them back where they came from.
Ay, caramba.
You gotta love it. They know the Democrats' weak spot and they're not letting up on it. Neither should they. This is what the everyday American wants to see the Republicans go hard on. They're absolutely sick of this invasion by design that the Biden administration has presided over for 4 years now. Even the conservative estimates are now over 10 million illegal immigrants have made it across the border.
The clip you played of mainstream American media before Biden resigned, when Kamala was responsible for the border, and now just demonstrates most of the media treat the public like the public don't have a memory span that is longer than 24 hours, and we literally can't remember what happened yesterday, and so they can treat us as if we're completely clueless. And of course, thanks to Elon Musk in particular and X, that's greatly helped people's memory because it promotes all of these things that the media try to hide, suppress, or simply deny outright.
That's right. I mean, and the denial that she was the border czar just gets more bizarre. I mean, how can you possibly say she wasn't the border czar?